All right, everybody, thank you for joining us for SOLIDWORKS 2023, What's New? I'm one of your presenters. My name's Mac, and I'm joined by
Jesse.
We're going to be your co-host today for this session. So we're going to jump in here. First, some kind of big news from our company. We have just acquired CATI. So CATI is now GoEngineer. So this is kind of big news. We're really excited to be working with a much bigger technical staff, really bright people. And if you're a former CATI customer, we want to send out sort of a special welcome to you. So let's cover a couple of things that might be new to you as a new GoEngineer customer. And I'm not going to go through all of these in detail, just kind of at a high level. We offer all the same kinds of training that everybody does. So in-person classroom and virtual web training, custom training at your site. But what might be new to you is GoEngineer has a catalog of supported self-paced training classes, right? So lots of different reasons why self-paced training might be advantageous. So people with limited mobility, students that live really far from an office or maybe different time zones, the whole night school thing, you can read all the reasons. But it's been very, very popular with our customers. They love it. We call it supported self-paced training because for 12 hours a day between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Central Time, you can call a special number and you can get a certified instructor to answer your questions. So if you're going through the self-paced course, but you have a question, maybe you've read through the material or watched the material twice and you're still not getting it, you can phone a friend, right? And so these are a special hotline that'll take you to a live body, certified instructor that'll answer your questions, get you over the hump. There's a free preview you can kind of try before you buy. It's not the complete class, but it's sort of a sneak peek of these 3 classes. So that's kind of neat. And just one other thing really quick about the courses. We offer most of the same courses that's, in-person training SOLIDWORKS certified courses, but we have some unique exclusive courses too. So just a couple I want to point out really quickly. We have a CSWA and CSWP preparation class. I mentioned this one before, but the CAD admin class, and tolerance analysis. I mean, that's a capability that's been in SOLIDWORKS for a very long time, but there's never been any training material for it. So that's pretty cool. And then at the very bottom, the GD&T in partnership with SAE. We're really excited about this. Again, we're the only ones that have something like this, but this is a really neat course that goes through, in conjunction with a certified SAE instructor, all the GD&T stuff, but more importantly, not just the theory, but how to do it in SOLIDWORKS. Where are the buttons? How do you control the default tolerances and all that kind of stuff? So really excited about that. That one's garnered a lot of excitement and interest in our existing customers. If you have a question, we're going to put a link that you can click on, but if you've got a mobile device, you can just scan this QR code and that'll take you right to the training page. You can read up about some of these other options. The other thing that might be new to you is we have a forum, or we call it the Go community. So it's free and accessible, basically a SOLIDWORKS forum. You can connect with SOLIDWORKS experts, other users around the world. And it's not just SOLIDWORKS, it's 3D printers, hardware recommendations, blog posts. So, it's not just technical people at GoEngineer that participate. It's obviously customers, SOLIDWORKS customers from around the world. So again, you don't have to be a GoEngineer customer to participate in this. It's free. You can just create yourself an account. You can see how the forum is organized by topic, right? So let me just drill down here into one of these and you can see what the question and answers look like, right? So here's a customer that had a question about permissions in PDM, and then you can see what the technical answer was, right? So pretty neat stuff. Again, here's the QR code. We'll put a link in the chat or on the screen that you can click on if you want to find out more about that. All right, so let's jump into it. Let's get into the good stuff that you're all here for. Here are all the topics that we're going to be showing you today. We've got them broken down by category. I just want to point out, maybe when you registered for the webinar, you saw that we were going to have some breakout sessions. Some of these we're going to cover at a high level, and then we've got subject matter experts in the breakout rooms that follow this to give you more detail on some of these some of these options. But we're going to start here with user experience.
And I might add, Mac, as we go through this, this is one of our sessions throughout the day. So we got about an hour and a half to get this content into your guys' brains. But you're going to see a common theme here of, well, I've already had that command, but wow, look what it does now. So bigger, better, faster, more maybe is kind of the theme. You're going to see a lot of additional functionality and things you may have already been using in the past as well. So I just want to point that out as we go through here. And we'll try to bring it up as we hit it. But
that's a great segue because the first thing I'm going to show you has to do with the user experience. Now, we categorize this as UI because it's not something unique to one facet of the software like sheet metal or assemblies or something like that, but it kind of spans the gamut, right? But this is an example. The first thing we're going to talk about, comments, is something that was in the software in like 2017, I think it showed up.
And we've been using them.
And people, it's been getting more and more popular. People have been making user enhancement requests. So I think that's kind of the result of what you're going to see next. So first one we're going to talk about is the UI or user experience, this guy right here. And so these are things that don't fall into any specific category like sheet metal or assembly, but kind of span the gamut of all these different things. So first thing we're going to take a look at is comments. So comments aren't new. To Jesse's point, they've been around since like 2017.
At least.
Yeah. People have continued to use them more and more. There's been more and more enhancement requests. So let's see what's new with comments. So I'm going to isolate this one part right here and highlight this face, and we'll say we want a comment. We'll add the comment right there. So the UI kind of looks the same, but you'll notice I can pick a word here, highlight it, and then make it bold, italicized, underline, do all that kind of cool stuff. And right there, that little icon, when I click it, it grabs the screenshot behind the comment dialog box. So, my comment now has context, right? I can see the area of the part or assembly that I'm making the comment about. So that's kind of cool.
That's very nice.
All right. In addition, I can attach images. So, this is an example of putting in a JPEG that actually shows the decal that should be there and where it belongs. So that's new and that's kind of nice. And then here we can color code the comment. So if I hit the little config button right here, you'll see we can categorize these or give a description like high priority, safety, things like that. So the other thing that's new, if you look at the lower left corner of this dialog box right there, there's a little button that says show on open. Now this is really important. If this is a safety issue, right, you might want that. And then let me close the part and we'll open it back up. And on open, that comment now comes up because it's safety related or important. So kind of neat stuff, okay? So if it's critical, we can make it show automatically the next time the part is open. All right, so let me just open up a whole bunch of toolbars here. Not that any of you guys ever do this. Like, we never see this when we go out to customer sites, right?
Never.
We never see toolbars all over the place.
We like messy user interface.
Yeah. So I know I do this. I bring up my macro toolbar. I bring up my line format. But after working for several hours, I may have a couple of toolbars open that I don't really need anymore. So new with 2023 is if we go to customize, we've got a new button right here. Let me kind of highlight it. You can see it right there. So when I click that, now I've got a choice of I can reset all the toolbars to the default. I can reset the command manager if I've added a tab or something like that, or I can reset all of it. My choice. So let's go and just hit reset toolbars, and you notice all those toolbars that I had open for that little particular task go away. All right, so we have to talk about performance every year at 3D Experience World. Customers get a chance to nominate their favorite enhancement requests or make new enhancement requests, and every year for like a decade or more, either number 1, 2, or 3 has been performance, right? So this year is no different. SolidWorks Dev has put a lot of effort into performance. So this option, the enhanced graphics performance, is not new, but there's been a lot of work in the background under the hood to make this more stable and perform better, especially, this is important, with the latest generation graphics cards. So, you know, graphics cards have had a lot of evolution, a lot of new technology, and SolidWorks wants to take advantage of that stuff. So let me give you sort of a graphical comparison. This is the same assembly on the same machine, same computer hardware, same version of the software, just with and without the enhanced graphics on, right? So you can see the difference. It's 3 times faster. And you can see the difference in the frames per second, right? So, you know, as your assemblies get bigger and bigger and more complex, this gets to be a bigger and bigger deal and really important.
Yeah, and as we go throughout this today, you guys are going to notice things. We're going to be mentioning performance, things like this. So maybe not something we can always show you, but we'll point it out that it's been written into the software, and maybe it's just an option like this, a setting.
Yeah. Yep.
To enable that kind of functionality.
Yeah. So just in summary, you know, comments, the under the hood sort of performance increases. And then the reset your graphics if you end up with a cluttered work screen are kind of the 3 big things with the user experience.
Very nice.
All right. So give us just a second. We're going to swap screens, take a look at Jesse's screen. Jesse's going to walk us through parts and features.
Great, thanks for that, Mac. So I'm going to dive in here and show you just a little bit of what's new with parts and features. Actually, it's kind of a decent list. But we'll use this little
mountain scooter.
Mountain scooter, tracked vehicle. Looks pretty rugged and dangerous, but fun. And here's kind of the list of things I want to show you guys in no particular order, but let's just jump into SolidWorks here. And what I'll do is I'll kind of zoom around and kind of zoom in on this little handlebar here up front. And you know, even with all of the maturity of the software, we still have room to add more cool features. Like engraving text on a cylindrical surface. It's always been a challenge with single line font. So what you see here is just a little sketch I've got on this plane. And using the wrap command, we can now grab single line font and actually get that onto that curved surface there.
That's huge.
Yeah, it's great. So engraving part numbers or serial numbers or something on a model.
Any of you that are doing machining are clapping probably right now.
And you know, we've always wanted this. Here it is. It's probably a result of an enhancement request.
Yep.
So good stuff there. The other thing that a lot of people use, and you know, I think Mac would agree, this is a really underused feature for some people that don't really know what the design library is. It's been around forever. We love it, but you know, you can store many things in the design library and reuse them via drag and drop. Now here's a case where I'm going to grab just a logo, drop it onto a face, and have it, you know, cut the geometry into the logo.
However,
traditionally, before 2023, if there was anything wrong with the feature or you dropped it in the wrong place,
wasn't completely on the plane or the face,
yeah, it was game over. So
right.
With 2023 now, you can just say, I don't care, go ahead and let me drop that on the face. I'll take care of the cleanup myself. And you'll get the feature on the tree with the ability to just do edit feature.
Yeah, because in the past, right, it would have terminated the command. Then you'd have to open up the library feature, edit that, and then try it again, right?
Fix it, go back, redo
This
everything.
is way better.
So way less clicking in an existing feature that's been there for a while. So pretty cool enhancement. And we think you guys should use the design library more often than you do now. How about that? Okay, good start on our design here. Now the grip is really smooth, so we'll go ahead and add some surface features here. And I want to start out by drawing just a little ellipse in a 2D sketch here. And you know, innocent command, been around for a while, but if you've ever tried to constrain an ellipse, it's always been a little challenging. Now we have an option here to add construction lines to the major and minor diameters and make it a lot easier to add horizontal and vertical relations, maybe even constrain it to the origin, add some dimensions.
Super nice.
Things like that. So visually a lot more appealing, easier to pick and manipulate, and at the end of the day, fully constrain your ellipses so you don't have to select multiple points. And then I'll just go ahead and link the length of that major axis there to a global variable. I've got some global variables stored in this part. Why not use them? So we'll do that. And then I'm just going to run a circular pattern on this body and just add a second instance there. So I just ran a second copy of that little knobby handle thing. And then also new in 23 is the ability to, using the move copy bodies command, link your rotation and translation values also to global variables. So instead of having just to type in numbers and test, you can link those with equations and or global variables, which then gives you the ability to jump into your equations on the actual equations folder here. And with automatic rebuild turned on, we can just rapidly iterate through design changes and have all those things update. So pretty nice.
Very cool.
Take a look at how many instances, what's the length of the ellipse, and just kind of run through different scenarios here and rather quickly get down to the one you need. So really nice. Move copy bodies now linkable to your equations and global variables.
I think you said one time that was one of your favorite commands, didn't you? Move copy body?
Yeah, I use it all the time. It's great. Okay, now that we've added complexity to this part, we always say, hey, what about your top level assembly? You're adding.
Do you need that much detail at your top level assembly?
It's just a handle grip, right? So new in 2023 is the ability to add a really cool thing to the defeature command. It's been around for a while, but we can, split screen and select a couple of features on the left here, and choose also features from the tree if you don't want to pick graphically. And we'll pick all the high features there, and we can create a configuration directly on this same model and simplify or defeature all that geometry. And now it just shows up as a configuration that we can toggle. Now, if you guys remember doing things like this in the past, it was a lot of having a second part that you were doing a replace component in your assembly with and trying to manage those two different data sets. Now you can just toggle over in the assembly. So let's jump back up here and apply that defeatured configuration right to the original part. Really nice. So pretty cool there with the defeature. So no more excuses, Mac, for poor assembly performance.
You weren't directing that at me,
Oh,
for
no,
instance.
of course not.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's just a quick hit list there of what's new in parts and features. What do we got next on the list here?
I think we're going to talk about some quick admin stuff.
Cool, some administration stuff. Let me just, if you don't mind, I'll just do a few more here. So for those of you that are responsible for managing licenses, either standalone, activation-based, or even network licensing, some really nice features just popped in here on the admin side. Notably, when you guys are licensing your flow simulation products, that particular software comes with a couple of modules, and you can either tell the license manager to dish out all of them to somebody when they start the add-in, or you can turn that off, and then the user in their software session can choose which modules they want to load on the fly. So you've got kind of the flexibility to do it both ways, which is pretty nice for that flow software. And then there's a couple updates to term licensing, and then how you guys will actually add your serial numbers and activate and deactivate your products if you're using activation-based licensing. So really, really cool. You can just go into the My Products in the upper right-hand corner in SOLIDWORKS, drop down, and we've added two new buttons here, the Add and Remove. And this is where you put in new serial numbers and remove old ones, and then activate right from here. So do you guys remember how that used to be done?
A little bit more effort.
Yeah, you had to modify your actual SOLIDWORKS install, add and remove programs, find the current version that you have installed, and then try to bang through the menus. Here, it's just a simple add and remove and then activate. And then we do have some dialog boxes that'll tell you guys if a term license is about to expire. You'll get a notification on that, which is always good when you're in the middle of a hot project or something. And then in the list of licenses here, we'll put an asterisk next to the ones that are expiring and even color code them if they need to be renewed or reactivated. So for all you that are administering software installs and serial numbers out there, you'll like this new addition to the administration family. Really good stuff. And I think high level, that's kind of it for what I wanted to cover on the administration side here.
All right.
What's next?
So I think we're going to pop over to my screen. So let me switch over here real quick.
Okay.
All right, folks. So we're going to take a look at some of the 3D Experience platform. Some of you might be familiar with this. Some of you might not have heard of this before. So we're going to take a real high-level look at the platform. And then this is one of the topics that if you want to know more, we have a breakout session with subject matter experts that are going to talk about 3D Sculptor, 3D Creator, as well as cloud collaboration and cloud PDM, and cloud integrated manufacturing, or CAM. Okay, so we've got all these different topics, but I'm going to give you just kind of a high-level overview of, if you're not familiar with the platform, what it is, what it does, what it's meant to do. So some of you may know this already, but SOLIDWORKS is just one brand of several that Dassault Systems has. So you can see some of the other brands. Some of you may have heard of CATIA, for instance, right? So what big deal? Who cares? Why would any of you care about that? Well, here's the thing. The approach that SOLIDWORKS is taking is actually really fantastic. So what they're doing is we're taking your desktop SOLIDWORKS, same product you've been using and know and love for decades, and we're connecting it to the cloud through the 3D Experience platform. And again, you might be thinking, well, so what? How does that affect me? Well, here's the deal. The platform has all of these really unique and powerful sort of niche applications that you now have access to through SOLIDWORKS. So how does that happen? Well, Dassault has this thing called the derived format converter, which basically connects our SOLIDWORKS, through the format converter up into the cloud, and we can run browser-based applications that do very specific functions, and then bring that back down into SOLIDWORKS. So we can pass SOLIDWORKS data up or bring data created there back down into SOLIDWORKS, and back and forth, right? Bidirectional associativity. So let me give you just a really simple example of why you might do something like this. In the industry, there's something called sub-D or subdivision modeling. You can see a little example on my screen here of this remote control. So subdivision modeling is very, very different than traditional advanced surface design in SOLIDWORKS or other CAD systems. So what do I mean by that? Well, look at this example. So if you look at the lower left, some of you may recognize that. That is the remote control from the SOLIDWORKS surfacing class, right? Mm-hmm. And I think I counted 18 separate sketches that had to be created and constrained and oriented in 3D planes just right to create the surfaces. And so the analogy that we always use when we taught the class is it's like making a skeleton or a balsa wood model, and then you put the surface over the top, right? But for every surface we have to create, we have to manually match tangency or curvature, right? It's kind of chasing your tail, right? Making sure you get a high quality model.
And now, if you've ever tried to constrain a spline,
yeah, exactly.
Times 18 for this guy here.
Exactly, yeah. So it's challenging. It can be done. It works well. It's it's proven. But take a look at the lower right. So there's another remote control, but you can see you just kind of start with a blob of material, and then you're kind of pushing and pulling and sculpting it, very much the way design bureaus do with clay car models, right? They just start with a big blob of clay and they sculpt it. So, there's all kinds of really cool features in this application in 3D Sculptor or the X apps. We're going to just take a look at a couple here. So let's jump in here. So what I've got a part, I'm in a browser, I've got artist renderings attached to my 3 orthogonal planes, and then I'm just starting with a big blob of material, kind of give it a rough size, and you can see it's all kind of dragging and pulling and getting into rotating some of these vertexes and edges. Very straightforward, and do a little bit more work here, and I can refine the mesh, if you will. But here's the important thing to remember. Every one of those patches of surface you're looking at in that quilt is guaranteed to be C3 continuity, right? So curvature continuous with its neighbor. So I don't have to do any work to ensure that. That's just out of the box.
But where are your sketches?
Yeah, right, exactly. No sketches, right? Yeah. It's all just by kind of like you're working with digital clay. You're pushing and pulling and sculpting, right? More than drawing 2D sketches, okay?
Kind of a new concept.
It's very, very much so, yeah? So now, let me highlight this edge. If, for instance, I don't want an edge to be curvature continuous, if I actually want a crease, you can see I've selected that edge. You see the little slider I'm moving at the top of the screen? So that allows me to adjust, whether it's a full hard crease or maybe, round it a little bit, as you can see. And if you look at the upper right, the back part of this, I've got a hard crease back there because that's where the propeller is going to go, which is a nice segue into our next example. So right here, what I've done is I've imported from SOLIDWORKS the propeller design. That was being done by an engineer in SolidWorks. I've uploaded it because I want the back part of this shape that I'm sculpting. Obviously, it's nice to have, push-pull, but I need real engineering numbers, right? So I can pick this command, I can match it to the back diameter of that propeller, and then I can even put in an offset of 3.25 and make exact numbers, right? So it's not all touchy-feely push-pull. We can snap to things, we can put in real numbers for offsets and sizes and things like that. So kind of neat stuff. All right, let's go a little forward here. So I want to show you this. I've got this little fin on the top, and I'm using a lasso select just to grab a whole bunch of the vertexes, right? And then I'll stop right here, and you can see all the vertexes and edges I've got highlighted, okay? So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to pick this command, and I'm going to draw with my kind of shaky mouse, like hopefully you guys can see that orange line, and I just free-handed it with my mouse, so it's a little shaky. But when I hit go, what's going to happen is it just made a fair curve, the smoothest curve possible, that kind of follows the line I drew, and then it took all those vertexes on the solid and matched that sketched profile. So that kind of is a sketch, but it's a lot easier than having to do a sketch.
Safe to say, people could, looks like you're in a web browser, people could also use
a stylus.
A pen or...
Yeah, because this is a web native app, I don't have to be on a Windows computer. I could be on an iPad with a stylus or even a mobile device, right?
Nice. And you were able to marry that with your existing SolidWorks data.
And better yet, check what I'm going to do next. So I'm going to fast forward in the design here a little bit. So we've partitioned the part into, the nose cone and the battery housing and the nacelle and things like that. But what I'm going to do next is I'm going to isolate that nose cone and I'm going to bring it down into SolidWorks, right? So this is that derived format converter. So here I am in SolidWorks with this. I'm going to shell it in SolidWorks. I'm going to create a sketch, add ribs. And this, so if you think through this process, I could create that conceptual design, that sort of Class A exterior surface in the Sculptor, bring it down into SolidWorks to do my finish engineering, right? Ribs, screw bosses, snap fits, all that kind of stuff, make a drawing of it. But here's the important thing. It's bidirectionally associative. So if I go back to the Sculptor, I can change that shape a little bit, and all my work here in SolidWorks is going to update.
It's the best of both worlds.
It is the best of both worlds, right? And this is really the unique approach that SolidWorks is taking. They're taking the SolidWorks we all know and love, connecting it to the cloud, and giving you access to these types of really powerful and unique capabilities.
Yeah, I think my favorite there, Mac, is any device.
Yeah.
Tablets, laptops, desktops.
Mobile devices. Macintosh computer. Yeah. How many times have we been asked, does it run on a Mac?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, this Mac.
I don't know if I could run it on my phone, though.
Yeah, it's too...
teeny screen.
Screen's too small. Yeah, so that's kind of the summary for 3D Sculptor. So let me just advance the slide one more time. So if you've got more questions about the platform and how this could affect you, again, we've got CAD in the cloud with 3D Creator. We've got cloud collaboration that includes data management. We've got integrated manufacturing with CAM. So there's a breakout session. We're going to have subject matter experts in there at the end of this. If you have questions on this, we can get into it in a lot more detail. Okay?
Love it.
What do we got up next? Sheet metal?
Yeah, sheet metal and structure systems. Let me share my screen here. So kind of back to first part of the list here, we'll just take a quick look at some of the new sheet metal features. And structure systems, which is a newer functionality in SolidWorks, but it's been around for a couple releases, but you guys really like what they've done here. And for this little piece, we'll use this little track setter piece of equipment here. So it's got some weldment structures we're going to build around it. It's got some sheet metal in it. Good example for this kind of stuff. Here's kind of a hit list of the things I want to cover, though. So let's jump right in. And if you take a look at this machine here, there's a little sheet metal bracket kind of covering up some of the couplings on those hoses there on the left side. Kind of zoom in here for you. And what we want to do is kind of extend that little piece of sheet metal out, make it a little bit wider so it covers up more and protects more some of those hoses and couplings there. So let's jump in and open this little document up in its own window here and take a look at the base flange. Now we could always do direction 1, direction 2, but you'd see when I stretch that side out a little bit further, I get a warning in my feature manager tree here. So what we've done for 2023 is expanded the ability of an existing tool called sensors. So they've always been there.
That's a great example of what you were talking about earlier, right? Sensors are not new.
Yeah, they've been around like forever, and typically we use them for simulation data and measurement data, mass property tracking. But now we've got the ability to include some of your important sheet metal features on there. So we've been notified here that we've violated the bounding box width sensor. So let's just take a look and jump in here. We'll edit this sensor. And here's the new category. It's sheet metal bounding box properties. And then we've got some subcategories here, the length, the width, the area, or the blank area. And then we can set some parameters there. Alert me when something does or does not happen to that sheet metal flat pattern.
So for instance, if this part was made from coil, right, and you knew how big the coil was, you could set a sensor that said, hey, if this part ever gets wider than X,
the coil,
and I can't make it out of that material anymore, better warn me.
Yeah, needless to say, your manufacturing team is going to love you because you're designing to...
You're not giving them headaches.
Right, to what we have in stock,
yeah.
Things like that. It's always good to do. So pretty cool sensors. It's going to save redesign time and costly mistakes maybe down the road in manufacturing. Now, let's also just kind of drag this back a little bit and see if we can't get our sensor to be happy. There we go. So now the warning has gone away. We know we're kind of within spec here on this sheet metal part. So sensors, underused feature. I think people should check them out.
Yeah, agreed.
And then, the way this base flange was drawn, if we take a look at it, we did the flats and the radiuses all in one big sketch, and they're all the same radius values. Well, when you apply a material thickness and you measure inside and outside radius values, you're going to get a slightly different value due to the sheet metal thickness. Again, this may be okay, but sometimes your manufacturing folks may come at you with why.
Yeah.
Now I got to do 2 separate pieces of tooling for this.
Yeah.
So there's a new setting. So if we just hit our breadcrumbs here and re-edit that base flange, there's a new setting in sheet metal. Do a symmetrical on your thickness there. And now when we take a measurement, both those values are identical. So, and I've tried to design parts this way with doing everything in the sketch, including the radius values.
Right. These tools a whole bunch
sometimes you scratch your head and
right.
say, how can I draw this so that it adheres to my sheet metal parameters? But no more worries on that.
I think that's my favorite sheet metal thing so far.
Yeah, and
2023.
Are people going to notice that checkbox when they're opening up existing parts? Want to make sure you guys know about it. Small but very powerful feature there. Okay, and then we used a gauge table to specify. So if we flip over to the flat pattern on the 2D drawing for this sheet metal part, we've always had the ability to insert cutlass properties, but now they come along for free. The gauge number.
Finally.
I mean, how many of you have struggled with linking custom properties, trying to write some equation and harvest the data from a spreadsheet? Who knows?
Yeah.
We just pop them in there now for you.
Yeah.
Cutlass properties. So the gauge values will show up for you now. No problem.
We should probably point out to the audience, this is another example of an enhancement request, right? So people have been asking for this. SOLIDWORKS listened, put it in the software.
Yeah, and just sitting on our help desk over the course of time, this is a very common wish or desire. People want to get that gauge on their drawings for obvious reasons. What's it made out of? How thick is it? So now we've got that for you there. Okay, next thing up is I'm going to just kind of jump into something called structure systems here. This is not new. It's been around for several releases, but every year SOLIDWORKS is putting awesome technology and functionality into this existing tool. And think of it as, I always say, weldments on steroids. I don't know. It's using the weldment cross sections that you guys already have in the weldment environment, but it's a little bit faster and kind of a unique way to design some of these structures. So let's just edit this part here. I've got a simple 3D sketch, kind of outlining the shape of the shipping container I want to put this track machine into. And when I initiate, I can box select those sketch entities, and there's all my cross sections right out of my weldment library. Pick a few planes, and you can put secondary members right on the planes, and they'll intersect where they need to. And that's a lot of clicking.
So wait a minute. Did it do all the corners automatically?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool.
All the corners, all the trimming has all happened. And I'm trying to, think how long that would take just using regular weldments. A lot of sketching. And
yeah, there's a lot of trimming you do if you did that in the conventional weldment.
Tons of manual trimming going on there. Yeah, you can do it. I think it's a little bit slower. So structure systems might be worth looking at this point if you guys haven't checked it out. But the other cool thing is now that we have all these corners created, we've got 3 beams coming into a corner here, and we've got a nice, miter there. But
looks nice, but kind of expensive to manufacture.
Like who's going to cut all those tubes at that weird angle? So what we're going to do is just in the structure system now, once you lay out your primary and secondary members, you can get into looking at how you manage all these corners. And really nice, if I pick one corner, I can just say select all the additional corners that are identical, and it'll auto-populate that corner box for me. And now if I make changes to one, I can change all. I can't even tell you how many mouse clicks this is going to save.
Right.
So bigger, better, faster for sure. So I'll just come down to my little trim order box here, and I can zoom into selection on any of these corners and just get a nice zoomed up view there, and just maybe change a couple of the trimming operations in order that they happen, and just kind of make that corner a little less expensive. And then because I chose one corner and they're all identical, it's going to do that same thing to all the additional corners with one mouse click.
Yeah, so very 2 clicks. You picked a corner, change the order of precedence, hit OK.
Yeah. And then, this in weldments, you would call this a gusset. It's called a connecting member in structured systems. So if I drop one little gusset in this corner on these 2 tubes here, and then I run a pattern on that, so I can pattern the element, this command will also notice that there's similar corners, highlight them all with a nice big pink arrow, and I can just hit OK and pattern that one element on all those corners.
Think about doing this the conventional way before this. We had to do move, copy, body, or patterns, or mirroring. And if the part wasn't symmetrical, that didn't always work right. Yeah?
Yeah, it's a nice clean feature tree. You've got all your gussets in there. You didn't have to do the command 14 or 20 times or whatever is here. So very, very cool here. The other thing that's nice is these are all configurable. So I can go back into my structure system, choose a different profile, and call out a different configuration on my model. So I might have a 2x2 pipe and a 3x3 pipe in the same part file, and it's going to adhere to all those things I did in the structure system and just change the size of that tube for me with one mouse click, or maybe a couple of mouse clicks here. Very, very cool. Remember, this stuff is configurable, and there I've got a different shipping container, a little bit stronger than the 2x2.
That's for when you got to send them overseas, right?
Yeah, and it's a reusable one. Yep. It's not going to rot out like a piece of wood might, or pallet. Anyways, that's kind of the hit list there for sheet metal and structure systems. A lot of good stuff there, well worth checking out for you guys when you get a chance. What we got next here?
Let's go back to the hit list.
Oh, assemblies. A lot of cool stuff in assembly design as well. So we've got this little conveyor system here, and I want to use this as an example to highlight some of these new assembly design features. It's a big assembly with a lot of repetitive things in it, probably thousands of parts. A lot of assembly mates might have to be done. So we'll look at different ways to sort of interact with an assembly of this caliber. Okay, so here's a good list. Let's take a look, jump right in and look at how some of this stuff is new in assemblies. So here's just kind of one of these little sub-assemblies here, and it's a bar with some innocent looking bearings. But a lot of times you may want to configure this and have different amount of bearings depending on the length requirements. So traditionally you had to go in and suppress individual bearings, make a new configuration, unsuppress those and suppress other ones. And it was a lot of, I guess, manual labor.
Yeah.
Just to make different iterations of it. What appears to be a simple assembly here. Well, now what we can do is look at any pattern type that supports skipping instances now has the ability to skip and configure. So this is new in 2023 here. So I can just leave this dialog box open and pick all my different, scenarios, if you will, of bearings, skipping and unskipping, and then just have those configurations happen automatically in the pattern command. So very cool. A little less work, a little less mouse clicking there. And then, if you wanted to do something to change maybe the cost, swap this bearing out for something a little less cheap or a different material. We've always had the replace component command, but now there's a couple more options. I'll kind of highlight this here for you. We can do only the selected item, all in the same parent assembly, or all instances of that object. So some new additions to the replace component command. Pretty nice.
That's really nice.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
And so I'll just browse out and pick a new bearing here. And this one happens to be made out of rubber. And now we get a nice preview as well. So we can see the actual image of the component we're replacing before we commit. So saving that rework if you pick the wrong one, or just were wondering what's going in there before you hit OK. So preview windows and then configuring any patterns that have the skip option in them are really big for this type of geometry. Now, obviously, when you do a replace component, sometimes things happen to your mates. I'm going to put this in my top 3.
I agree.
Top 3 coolest things in 2023.
Yep.
It was always a kind of a lot of work to go back and edit the mate and figure out which face, edge, or vertex was missing and try to pick a new one to replace it. Well, now you can do this a couple ways in 23. You can actually just click on the bad mate from the pop-up here. You'll get an auto repair option, and the software will run its a fix on it for you. Or you can right-click on the entire mate folder and auto repair if you have a lot of bad mates. Maybe you had 20 mates that broke due to that one part replacement.
Yeah.
And what it's going to do is it's going to run through and automatically look for faces, edges, vertexes, any reference geometry, do the replace and update on the mates for you, and then give you a little dialog that says, hey, I fixed 5 bad mates or whatever it turns out to be. And now your configurations are all clean. To that I say,
good job. Yeah.
Why wouldn't you use this as a starting point?
Well, yeah, you got nothing to lose, right?
Right.
The mates are already blown up, so.
Yeah, it's great. So look for the auto repair option. And then one other thing, if you guys are using configurations like we are in this assembly, it was always kind of a manual effort to go back and choose how you wanted that configuration to show up in your bill of materials. So you had to edit each configuration and then set a value or a setting here so that your BOM on your drawing would look correct, okay, due to the configurations. Well, now in 23, we can just pop into actually right into the document properties of the subassembly, and then you can predetermine forever and ever what happens on your bill of materials just by making the change right there. Now, every time you use this document, it's just going to be correct.
That's huge.
Call it like a set it and forget it type thing for bill of materials purposes. Very cool. Accurate reflection of your configurations is the name of the game here. And then, this particular structure is well suited for assembly cuts. We've got a piece of sheet metal wrapped up there, and we want to kind of cut away that little vertical post so that it doesn't interfere with that bend. So I've just got a little sketch here in my assembly, and I'm going to run an assembly cut to sort of add some little relief in there, if you will. Now what we support is all the end conditions that you're used to in the regular cut command that you guys can do on parts. So up to vertex, up to surface, through all, and I'll just pick a face over here and have that cut run in. And then for the feature scope, you can always let the software auto select for you, or I could choose maybe just turn off the auto select, and maybe I'll just draw a box around a whole bunch of components here and make sure my cut affects those documents. Pretty easy, pretty straightforward. It's always been that way. And we've always had the ability to propagate that cut geometry actually down into the part files that are being touched by that cut. But I did this on purpose to show you guys. However,
yeah,
I'm cutting through my standard parts library at this point.
No good.
Toolbox parts, fasteners, nuts, washers, bolts, that kind of thing. So as soon as I turn on the propagate button, without me having to think about it, the software is just going to remove all the toolbox components and then tell me about it.
Yeah,
this is great. So you're not accidentally going to wreck some libraries that everybody's using across all assemblies. So really nice feature there, using assembly cuts in your scoping and propagating. And then a couple things here. If you guys have ever looked at the magnetic mate technology in SOLIDWORKS, now this has been around for quite some time too. I can't remember exactly what year it came out, but it's a way to rapidly drag and drop subassemblies into your top level, and these little magnetic points will seek out and find other magnetic points in the assembly and snap together.
Wait, what do they do?
Snap together. Could make a noise or
like
something.
Legos.
Be nice if there was a sound on that. Anyways, the way this works in the software is you predetermine these points in your subassembly. They're called published references here. And then as you add the assembly to the top level, these things get recognized. Now in the case of configurations, you may want to suppress some of those. I don't have some internal legs on this shorter conveyor. Let's shut those ones off. So now you can configure these magnetic points in your subassemblies. And then when I go to drop it in here, it's a little less magnetic points, and so the snapping a little more predictable and a little less busy, I guess you would say. So I can see the ones in the middle have been suppressed there. And you're more likely to get the right placement the first time around using magnetic mates. So pretty cool there. And then the other thing the software does is if you hide or isolate components, if there were magnetic mate points on those components, they will get ignored as well. So I can bring in, and then it's only going to show on the screen ones that are actually visible. So pretty cool technology. We've made some nice additions to it in 2023. This type of geometry really lends itself to those tools. You know, how many mates would you have to put on here, Mac, to fully constrain all these boards?
A lot. Yeah.
You know, again, getting back to assembly performance, less work,
faster,
better, more predictable. All that comes into play here with magnetic mates and the new functionality. I'm also going to put this next command in my top 3, Mac. I know I'm using up all my top 3s right away, but this tool has been in the software for a long time. Assembly visualization.
We tell customers about it any chance we get, right?
Yeah, and we use it a lot when we're diagnosing and troubleshooting.
But it's used for so many good things.
Yeah, it's a great tool. But when you turn this on, you'll just get the little extra tab in your feature manager tree here. And now right away we can sort by mass or weight and
or any custom property.
Any custom property, you can add more columns in here.
Material, vendor name.
And think about doing this in the regular tree. You cannot sort by weight.
Right.
There's no way to do it in the feature tree. So this is a new way to sort of look at, sort, and parse through your data. The bigger the assembly, the better this becomes. Now, subtle as well, but when I add another column and I choose one of my custom properties, or in this case, maybe show me the tax on my graphics card, bring out the number of triangles. That list is now alphabetical, Mac.
Small thing, but we appreciate it.
Yeah, you remember where graphics triangles was? Way at the bottom somewhere?
Way at the bottom, yeah.
Not in order. And then the drag bars on the bottom and top, the roll back and roll forward bars, if you want to call them that, are a lot more bold and easier to grab onto. So that tool just gets a little bit easier to use with some nice added functionality. And now we can see right away just the things we have showing with the rollback bar. And then just I mentioned this earlier, but getting into performance here, there's a new setting that affects assemblies called automatically optimize resolved mode and hide lightweight mode.
This is a setting. This is my top 3.
Your top 3? Yeah. This is. I'm never going to not use this.
So any of you that work with large assemblies A and B, assemblies with a lot of layers to the hierarchy, and C, work in a team, groups of you, not just one person working on the assembly. This is huge.
Yeah, love it. And it's just a change to your performance settings. So you turn it on your machine, and it simplifies working with large assemblies and having to make those decisions on kind of how you open the data. So you just turn it on, and it's like a set it and forget it. Now, when you go to File, Open, and you pick on a document, you're going to notice you're missing the lightweight option there. It's not a choice. So the slider bar has been simplified. The documents open faster, and the software picks which way to open them for you. Lightweight, fully resolved, a combination of it, and things will just open faster. And then the other thing you'll see is the little, is it blue, the feather on the tree?
Gone.
So you don't have to know or care. If you guys remember last year, if you expanded a part that was in lightweight, you could set it to auto resolve. Right. So now that's just happening as well. So just building on functionality and performance gains that actually started last year. Very nice option there. Larger the assembly, the better off it's going to be. And then, oh man, this also might be in my top. When you're communicating files with other people via STEP, which is probably the most common format.
Right. Neutral format.
Yeah, neutral format for swapping between other systems and softwares. There's just a new option here on the export of step files to export the entire assembly structure as individual files. So each part, each subassembly, they'll all get their own step file in the folder instead of this huge monolithic, 200 megabyte step file that takes forever to import and export. Yeah. So just kind of showing you what that would look like in the folder. Here's all individual step files. Now, if I reread it back into SOLIDWORKS with 3D Interconnect, the structure is there, and each one of these documents is pointing to an individual step file.
So think about this. If you're interfacing with a vendor or a customer, or maybe even your own purchasing, if one vendor was going to make this part of the machine, another vendor was going to make a different part, right? You'd have to send that whole, in the past, that huge step file of the whole big thing, the whole enchilada, to everybody. Now you can just send piece parts.
Yeah, it's nice. I like that option. Okay, I think that's it here for the assembly stuff I wanted to show. It's a big list, a lot of good stuff. Good gains, good performance gains there.
All right, so we're going to take a look at drawings next. So, you know, in the current year, even though a lot of companies have initiatives for model-based definition and PMI and MBD and things like that, you know, by far and away, the most common way to communicate is still drawings, right? So SolidWorks acknowledges that, even though, you know, we've got PMI and MBD and all that fancy, cool 3D technology, we're still putting in enhancements and things in our drawing package. So let's take a look. So, you know, documenting your design, basically, you know, no matter who you are, we're still making drawings, right? So lots of enhancements here in drawings in general. Let's get into some of the specifics. A lot of it has to do with balloons and bombs. So let me throw a bomb on here and some balloons. And let's dive in. All right, so first thing we're going to do is right there. So check this out. If you're a longtime SolidWorks user, you know that this has been an enhancement request forever, right?
Since day one.
Since day one. So, well, maybe not day one, but for a long time, right? People have been asking for this. I know when we teach classes, it's a very logical thing to like, can I open the drawing of this other part from this drawing, right? So basically that's what I'm doing. I'm in the feature manager, right? And I've right-clicked on a subassembly or part in the feature manager, and I've got this pick now to open the drawing right there. So we can go ahead and do it, open the drawing. Now this drawing has a bomb on it, so check this out. I've picked a cell in the bomb, and I'm going to do the same thing, open the drawing. So I opened a subassembly from the bomb of a drawing.
Right off the table.
Yeah, right off the table. Oh. That's pretty cool. Now,
nice.
If I have a drawing like this, I can actually pick an item, you know, a geometry in the graphics area of a view on the drawing, and same thing, open drawing. So I can open that part's drawing. So tile my views so you can see all this stuff. I mean, this is such a subtle little thing, but I think it's going to be a big time saver.
Not once did you go into the file open.
I know.
And start banging around through folders.
Yeah, trying to find the drawing I was looking for. Right.
That's nice.
Pretty nice. So it's common to make manual overrides on bombs. So if you look at this, I've just added a part that I didn't model, the lithium grease, right? Quantity 1, and then I changed the quantity for these 3/8 inch seals, right? And you notice there's a note there that says include the spares. So the actual quantity in the assembly was 2, and I changed it to 4 because we're going to ship a couple extra. I mean, this is pretty common practice, right? But because we are able to do this, it can occasionally lead to, you know, miscommunication or things like that. So new with 2023, whenever I select on a bill of material like that, just click it, you'll notice anything on the bomb that is been overridden, whether it's the description, the quantity, or a complete row that I've added that's not in the model, like the lithium grease, turns to this special color, right? And then I can show you the color here, and we can configure the color, you know, with tools options, right? All right, and then of course, we can restore the original value. So I want you to pay attention to, before I click this, look at the row that's the 3/8 inch seals, and I overrode the quantity to make it be 4, right? So there's only 2, or whatever it was in the assembly. I changed it, made it be 4. So when I go to the click on the restore original value, it'll reset all of those to their, you know, real values. All right, so let me throw some balloons in here. That was auto balloons, like that. And this is what's new. So that right there, you can see there's a quantity option now. So the quantity thing isn't new. That's been in our balloons for a while, but it was, I don't know if anybody remembers this, but you could only add a quantity exponent to a manual balloon, a balloon that you drew by hand. So it didn't work with auto ballooning, right? So now for 2023, you notice I just auto balloon those.
Nice.
Yeah, I can add a quantity exponent. So let me just move these around and kind of make it look pretty. And then select some of the ones that are quantity 1 and turn that option off. Now I've got a nice balloon drawing with quantity exponents on the balloons. All right, so filtering our bombs. So what we've done in 2023 is we've tried to add sort of Microsoft Excel-like functionality, okay? So you'll notice I clicked on the column header and I got this drop down. What are they called in Excel? It's like pivot tables or something like that. But you'll notice I have regular quantities in this column, right? I've got in work, I've got released. So what I can do is I can unselect one of these, hit OK, and I've just hidden all of those rows that have that capability, right? Bring them back so I can see them all. So I basically can custom mix my BOM to say only show anything that's released or only show anything that's in work, for instance. And here's another example. I'm going to filter for a part number, so I type in 25, or I can do conditional formatting and say it has to begin with 250. And again, you notice how I've just narrowed down my BOM very quickly. So the idea here is we want to give people the ability to customize BOMs, kind of take all the BOM information, but sort of mix it, right? Custom mix it so we're only showing specific pieces of information because we may want to write this BOM out and give it to purchasing or a vendor or something like that, right? So let's pop back over here. And notice what I'm trying to show you here is I change this. You notice as I mix and match the BOM, my number of balloons is changing as well, right? So only balloons that correspond to items in the BOM are going to be shown. And of course, we can export this. So this is a good example of, I've only got purchase, release, parts, right? They meet that categorization of released and buy. And so I can save this out as a spreadsheet, get it over to purchasing if these are long lead items or something like that. All right, another cool new thing that showed up in the software because of all of you and enhancement request is this right here. So see-through transparent objects, right? So, you can see on the left, the assembly has a transparent part that's the, covering of the bezel, the little glass face or plastic face. But when we make a drawing of it and it does the precise hidden line removal, that would be opaque, right? And the only way you could get the drawing to look like that is if you made a configuration, hid that piece or suppress that piece, right? But then your BOM wouldn't be right and yada, 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 right? So now in a view, you've got that little option right there. And then if I do this, if I go up to Tools Options and Detailing, and right there you can see I can set the whole document to have that option. So if I do that, and then I add another view from the view palette, there we go. Those will just automatically show through, okay? So that's the cool new stuff with drawings. We good?
We are good.
All right, so that kind of wraps up drawings. Let's switch over to Jesse's screen. Jesse, you want to?
Yeah, I got a couple of things I want to show you guys with routing. Let's jump in quick here and look at some of the new things with SolidWorks routing, and then I'll come back a little bit later and I'll also show you some electrical stuff too. But we'll use this fridge here, refrigerator. Fridge?
Well, I was just teasing you because instead of calling it a fridge, you were calling it a frigerator. Refrigerator.
Chilling device. To show some of the highlights with SolidWorks routing here. So there's a couple of systems in this refrigerator. And just, it's a smaller list here, but some of this stuff is really cool. You guys will like this if you're using SolidWorks routing. So let's take a look at some more of these cool enhancements in detail here. So this is just, quote unquote smart refrigerator. It's got several systems in it. We've got flexible tubing, copper and water lines, and then obviously the electrical harness to provide power and circuitry to the machine. So let's first jump in and take a look at this wire harness here. And one of the first things you're going to notice when you edit these routes now and look at the wire list is the ability to kind of get accurate length calculations of each wire segment and accurate diameter calculations. So this is a lot more information than we previously had in routing. And then as a kind of an added bonus here, if you pick on one of the wires in the wire list, you can actually show the cross section of that section of the bundle and get a kind of a look at which wires are running through there. And then any of these wires that have a dashed line around them are ones that aren't being used in this bundle. So there's no wire assignment for that yellow wire there. So that's pretty cool. Nice visual representation there.
That is nice.
And then, of course, the flat drawing placed on a 2D is always a great piece of documentation. Everybody likes to go after these. So now inserting auto balloons is a lot cleaner. They stack nicely. This typically would require a lot of manual editing in previous versions. So the auto ballooning has been upped quite a bit. Even if you were to delete and reinsert some balloons, they'll still stack nicely and be a lot easier to modify and move around. So some nice additions there to the auto balloon capability.
Gotta love magnetic lines.
Yeah, they're nice. And then really subtle here, but when you hover over any connector table, it'll put a dotted orange line back to the connector it's talking about. So now you have the ability to spread your tables out around on the drawing and make it look a little nicer and still know what that connector table is talking about. Small but very cool enhancement right there. And then if I were to right click on any of these tables and insert another column, I want to show some more electrical information or routing properties, I'll get a prompt that says, do you want to add this to all the tables?
Wow.
So the bigger the drawing, the more important this becomes. So that one's really nice. That's probably my favorite electrical enhancement right there. And then just kind of looking back at the 3D model here, we want to add another fan into the cooling system to achieve greater cooling power here on this refrigerator. So typically we'd want to splice in that fan to the existing route we have there instead of making a new secondary route. So here's the kind of the schematic of what we're after, kind of the 2D look. If we pop back into the assembly here, splices now have the ability to have multiple connection points on them.
Nice.
Yeah, so you don't need to make a separate splice for each circuit now. So you'll get something that looks like this. So if we pop this in and reinsert our from to list into this assembly with the new data, we can actually just drop in the new connectors, and the routing information that's in the from to list will show up as those guidelines, which can very easily be converted into route lines now. So very accurate description of a splice there.
If I'm not mistaken, this has been an enhancement request, right? Or this?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Splice. A lot of work's been going into splicing in this software in the last couple of releases, and here's a nice example of it. You know, there was workarounds you had to do to get that kind of geometry on the screen before. So very nice multi-connection point on splices. And I think that's kind of it. That's what I want to show for routing. Just kind of the new enhancements there.
That's some good stuff.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah. All right. So give us just a second. We're going to switch over and look at my screen. All right, so we're going to pop up here and we're going to talk about PDM and take a look at some new stuff with SOLIDWORKS data management. So, you know, lots of new stuff. I mean, this is appropriate because PDM, outside of SOLIDWORKS itself, PDM is the most popular, add-on product that SOLIDWORKS has, right? And going strong. People still buying it like hotcakes. So kind of makes sense that there's a lot of attention and a lot of new features to it. So we're going to go back to our little shredder mountain scooter and use this little assembly in the vault to show you some new features, right? So kind of excited about some of these. Let's dive in. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the data card right here. So this is a subtle thing. It's not a big earth-shaking new feature. But it's a subtle little thing, and again, came from people asking for it, right? All of you, the end users, asking us to put this in the software. So there's kind of two concepts on a data entry card. There are the fields that we can put in information, and then there's other parts of the card that are static. Now, for instance, if you look at the file name, the created by, you know, that's text that's on the card, but it's static, right? We can't go in there and type new information. So new for 2023 is all of this static data now we can copy and paste, right? So if I want to take the file name, which happens to be the part number, that I also want to be the doc number, right? I can just cut and paste it, right? So a little bit of a time saver. I don't have to, manually type that in, looking at that field and risk,
Nice.
transposing a number or something like that. So
I think I've actually voted for that one because I saw that enhancement request.
Yeah.
I always wanted to do that.
Yep.
PDM cards.
Yep. So next, what we're going to take a look at is right here. So let me just highlight this. So now we can do custom tooltips. So, this is, again, a subtle thing, but it's really important. If you expect users to fill out these fields, or maybe the field's even mandatory, right? We want to make sure that everybody understands exactly what kind of data has to go in here, right? So a couple things, look at the field name on the card. It's grayed out now, but kind of in the background, it says PM, right? Well, that stands for project manager. Now we've got a detailed tooltip that says, use this button to find and select the product manager, for this project, right? So custom tooltips, that's pretty cool. The other thing that's new is button control. So now, when I click this button, we can link it directly to user data. So I can search for Pete. He's the project manager. And, obviously with a search, I find him, we plug it in, and life is good. So now I've got Pete Project as my project manager. So pretty cool stuff. Next, let's take a look at the history, and I'm going to highlight these rows so we can also include this user information as variables for both the transition and revision comments. Now, those of you that are familiar with PDM and you've been using it for a while, you know that we've always had this column for user, and you can see, if you look at it, it says Eric, Dan, but now we can incorporate that information, the user information, in the actual comment. So if you look on the right side, we can see the design was approved by Eric Engineer, right? So I don't have to bounce back and forth between, one column and another, who approved it, and then look away. And so again, subtle little thing, but kind of nice. The other thing that's new is when I go to get latest, if you look now, we're including the last saved and revision information. So again, this is kind of subtle, but we could always see the versions we were getting, but you could never tell just by looking at a version, unless you had a really good memory, which version corresponded to, say, Rev B, right? So now, if you look in the right-hand column, we can see the actual Rev information. So again, subtle, but pretty cool. All right, so these automated notifications based on workflow state change have always been a big thing. And super helpful and great in SolidWorks PDM. So new for 2023, we're giving PDM admins, a full HTML sort of editor for designing these forms. So in the past, we could change a little bit of things, like there were some checkboxes to control like what information was in there.
Pretty minimal,
but it was pretty minimal. So now we have a full HTML notification editor, which means we can do things like add images, so you could put your company's corporate logo on there. We can do column set information. We can customize this form so it's more meaningful, more impactful, communicate more information. So, and that's the whole purpose of a active notification, right?
And quite frankly, the purpose of a PDM system.
Indeed. Right. Good point.
Yeah.
All right. So creating and designing deliverables, right? We've always been able to do this, but take a look at this. New for 2023, we've always been able to create documents on state change, right? So we can create a PDF on drawing approval and things like that, but now in 2023, we can create step 242 as part of a task or a workflow state change. We approve the part. Our company has a MBD PMI initiative, right? So I can automatically create a step file that's got all the PMI in it and notify manufacturing that this part's ready to go, right? So, or for a vendor in purchasing and things like that. So kind of neat. The other thing that's new is for eDrawings users, you'll notice if I go into this folder, I've got two documents in here. I've got an e-drawing and a HTML output of an e-drawing. So the e-drawing itself has a thumbnail, which is pretty cool. And the HTML now shows up in the preview browser, you know, the little preview window with all the full controls, the Microsoft Edge controls, right? Which means that you can cut cross sections and you know, look at the assembly hierarchy and explode it and things like that. So again, nice little changes, nothing earth-shaking. We're going to save the earth-shaking stuff for next. That's what's coming up next. So new for 2023, performance, big difference here. So in PDM Pro 2023, common archive server activities like, you know, adding documents, removing, or transitioning files, we'll see a significant increase in performance in high latency environments. So if your company's international and you've got replicated servers overseas, transatlantic, transpacific, those are historically very high latency environments. And the folks on the other side of the pond can have poor performance. So 2023, they've done some, you know, under the hood, you know, basic engineering to drastically increase that kind of performance. So all of you listening in that are PDM professional users and you know, have multi-sites, some of them overseas, or I guess the other thing this could impact is, you know, a lot of our customers are saying their IT groups have cloud initiatives and they want to take their on-prem PDM Pro and put it up into a public cloud, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And so obviously the latency from a machine that's in your building versus, you know, an Azure server or some other public cloud is obviously going to be different. So good things coming on performance with 2023. The other thing that's new is security. So now all traffic between clients and the archive servers is now encrypted, right? Completely encrypted. So that's good. The other thing that they've added for 2023 is there's now the ability to log get activity. Now, for people that have high security environments, this was a enhancement request. So you can now log who's getting what documents, right? So traceability, trackability, big thing. So that's the highlights of what's new in PDM for 2023. Some really good stuff. What do we got up next, Jesse?
I want to dip into a little bit more on SOLIDWORKS electrical. So we did some routing stuff. I want to also show you guys what's new in the electrical package as well. So kind of a big list here for electrical. Some really exciting new functionality here. So let's just jump in and take a look. And we'll use this little assembly here to kind of show some of these techniques or these tools for you. So we'll just dive in here and take a look at some of the new features with wiring, cabling, and obviously documenting that stuff with the electrical package. So in this machine here, we're going to complete the power switch for this motor here. It's a purchase motor, and we want to sort of complete the electrical requirements for that, and then get everything pushed out into a final report. So one of the things here that you're going to see is this motor may be used in different places in my electrical environment, different projects, different schematics. One of the new things that it could also be in the 3D assembly like we saw just a little bit ago. One of the new things is if you were to delete something like that, there's now a report that pops up, you know, hey, you're deleting it in all these different places. So you kind of know what you're affecting before you commit to that final delete, which is kind of nice. A lot of loose ends don't get left out there in that case. And then let's go ahead and drop in a new schematical symbol here for this motor. And one of the other things here is obviously we can assign a manufacturing part numbers. We can associate this to the 3D CAD model. And we might have a bunch of electrical attributes as well in this component. Well, now in 23, all that stuff will actually travel up into the 3D model. We can also have things on here like weight, you know, anything that you would consider a custom property in 3D will now move into that 3D environment. So if we look at, for example, all the custom properties on that motor, there they all are. They came from the electrical environment. Mass properties, the weight has been tracked and pushed.
That's huge.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And you can see even there it says it's been overridden. So you know, a lot of times on purchase parts,
you got to do that anyway, right?
Yeah, because it's a surface model or a bunch of parts, multi-body parts in one file. So all that stuff now comes in from your 2D electrical schematics and vendor parts. Very cool. You can also, in electrical, insert dynamic connection tables on the fly, or sorry, labels. So as you're going through, you can just put in here the ones you need. They're also tied to specific configurations, so you'll get the data you need and the number of rows that you need just for that one connection label. Now, the other thing about this machine is some people probably would want to buy this and hardwire it in instead of plugging in like you see here. So there's a new option in electrical to allow the creation of open-ended wires. So I can just delete this plug, and those wires are now sort of hanging out there, but they're still supported in the project. So we still get lengths and symbols and, you know, wire names on them. So bare wires are now allowed in 2D electrical. And then just looking at the 3D model here, the tree of all the electrical components in the project, there's some quick buttons and filters up here on top that have been added to expand and collapse the entire list, and these can get pretty lengthy. And then also we can show things that have been assigned or not assigned. And then last but not least, we can show what they've been associated to, a part, an assembly, if it's in another assembly, has it been suppressed, all that information will be showed here in these filters now. So you get a better idea of what's going on with the project. And then this is a really big one. You can now associate multiple components at the same time. So just pick all the ones you want to associate to the 3D models and just start going through the list here, and they'll just get associated one at a time, allowing you to stay in that dialog box and do all your associations in one shot. That was just a repetitive activity before. Yeah. You can take care of it in one shot there.
That's nice.
Yeah, very nice. And then last but not least, when you're done with your electrical work, you want to spit out those final reports. So bill of materials, wireless, all that kind of stuff can be placed on your project sheets here. Oh, by the way, side note, bill of materials can now be copy-pasted between sheets in your project and still remain associative. That was a manual effort before. So we can actually copy-paste it over to this other sheet here, and it'll still be the same bill of materials, which is very nice. And then if you guys are inserting images in your electrical environment, it was restricted to bitmaps last year and anything previous to that. So now we can use all of the popular picture formats, JPEGs, you know, PNGs, TIFFs, all supported now in electrical. So just plop them on there and get going. No need to convert to a bitmap in order to use them in electrical. And then some of your sheets may be oriented horizontally, some vertically. All that stuff can now be maintained in your final PDF output. So there's a new setting here to say automatic orientation, and it will just honor those orientations of all your sheets, making the final PDF deliverable a little bit higher quality. So I'm not trying to smash a horizontal into a vertical and things like that. So pretty big list, but you know, should be exciting for all you electrical users out there. So when 2023 comes out, jump on board.
Thanks, Jess.
I think that's the list, yeah.
All right. So flip back over to my screen here. Okay, so we're going to jump down and talk about simulation. Now, folks, I know that we're getting close to the end of the webinar, and we've got some good stuff to show you here. Just a reminder, we've got a sim breakout. We've got a lot of breakouts, but one of them is sim. So we don't have time to cover all this stuff, but we have subject matter experts that are going to be joining us in those breakouts. So let's jump into it. So the first thing is we've got the ability now to speed up complex solves involving contact, right? So we've got this new thing called the contact penalty stiffness, and it's a scale factor. So let's take a look at our assembly here. So I've got this sewing machine, and you can see it's a fairly complex assembly. Got a lot of moving parts and stuff going on, but this we can use this to explain some of the new capabilities in simulation. So we're looking at the presser foot assembly, right? This is in the head of the sewing machine, and we'll zoom in on this a little bit so you can see it better. But just so you can see what's going on here, we've got this little lever that disengages the foot or engages it, and it's powered by that spring there. And really, what we're trying to do is figure out the proper spring stiffness, right? We don't want to make it too soft because then you get float as the machine is operating. And obviously, if we make it too stiff, it makes moving that lever too difficult. So if I, activate one of these configs and design states, you can see all my mates are still working. But this is what we call sliding contact. And this particular scenario in a solve can lead to really, really long solve times, okay? So what's going on here? So in previous releases, the contact stiffness, the default contact stiffness, I shouldn't say default, the only one, you didn't get to choose, was 10 times harder than diamonds, or more than diamonds, right? And diamonds are, 5 times more than alloy steel. So, it resulted in very accurate but very long solve times, right? And we've got we'll get into the details later, but suffice it to say, it led to long solve times. So new for 2023 is this capability on the study, right? So it's kind of a global study thing where we can adjust this stiffness, and we can go from the old way of doing it, which was basically, 10 times harder than diamonds, at 1, or slide it to the left and make it more like copper. Okay, so if you take a look at this and we look at the study here, you can see all the contact we've got defined and all the surfaces on the parts that are involved in the contact set. And if I go to the properties of the study, here's the slider, right? So if I slide it down to, the least, which is copper, and then run the study, let this solve. There's my results. Pretty cool. And if you look at the kind of side-by-side taste test comparison, you can see the old way of doing it on the left was, 4.5 minutes, and on the right, with reducing the contact penalty stiffness, it's 48% faster. So, sounds good, right? 48% faster?
Well, yeah, and they look identical to me.
Yeah, well, the
untrained eye.
The skeptic in me was like, well, okay, it's faster, but, what are we doing here? So, big shout out to Sean Bentley for taking the deep dive and putting this information together. So, Sean's got one of those beautiful analytic minds that had the exact same thought and really drilled down to see what's going on here. So, some of you that have taken the simulation course, you may recognize this. This is right out of the student handbook. And it's a contact case, right, for these players. And if we look at the contact stiffness and forces, you can see they're a little bit more peaky on the hard side, the diamond side versus the copper side. But again, not a huge difference. Interestingly, if you look at the stress in the model, there's not a big difference in the stress. So, pretty relieved to see that. Displacement, a little bit bigger difference, but it's not like way out of the ordinary. Okay, so pretty good. The final takeaway is think of this contact stiffness penalty the same way we think of draft elements, right? If you know that you have complex contact or maybe a simulation that has a lot of contact, it's going to be a really long solve. Nobody wants to wait 3 hours only to see, oops, I missed something, or I forgot to do this, or some crazy thing like that, right? So same way we use draft elements, you can reduce the contact stiffness penalty, get a quick solve, look and see if it looks right, reasonable, and see if you've missed anything, and you can always up that later and get more fine-tune your results. Okay, so the next thing, going back to the assembly, is we're going to look at this little subassembly that holds the needle. And I'm going to remove these set screws from the assembly. And this goes back to talking about contact, right? And we want to define contact and bonded contact between the set screw holes and that little cylinder. So let me pick these and pick these. And what I want you to, hopefully you can see this, you can see how that right-hand set screw is way offset, right? This simply would not have worked in 2022 and previous. That, bonded contact would not have worked because, the target and the face didn't perfectly align. So much better capabilities in defining bonded contact for faces that are not touching or at extreme angles. Yeah, so let's take a look at this kind of complex mechanism here. And we are going to take a look at kind of a user interface change. The reason this wasn't lumped into the UI stuff in general, it's simulation specific, right? So if you look in the command manager, right up here at the top, we've kind of grouped a lot of the diagnostic things that we look at. So, mesh quality diagnostics, right, is under there. I can check my mesh. I can look for, my aspect ratios, anything out of whack. And of course, I want you to kind of pay attention. A lot of the bad elements that have bad aspect ratios are on these plastic injection molded parts that have all these ribs and pockets and fillets and things like that. Okay, we'll come back to that in just a little bit. But so the other thing that has been changed or enhanced for 2023 is the under constrained bodies command greatly improved, right? So watch this. If I ask the software to show me under constrained bodies and hit calculate, right? So it's going to do all the free body calculations. So now you'll notice not only is it way faster, we're doing something called a singular value decomposition, much faster than in previous versions, but also we get a far more realistic result in the degrees of freedom that the body is free to move. So it's easier to see, oh, I forgot to add this kind of thing or that kind of thing, right? So in this screen right here, take a look at that part in the background. That is the dark gray one that's got all the pockets that had a lot of the bad mesh in it. Here's what's new for 2023. So right here, we're going to hide that. And then if you look, this linkage rod, again, this isn't new for 2023. I think this showed up in 1 or 2 releases ago. But what's new for 23 is it's now available for nonlinear and dynamic studies. So in this case, right, that part in the back, I'm not interested in its particular performance. I simply want to replace it with a linkage rod, right? Because I'm trying to analyze that sort of comma-shaped part at the top, right? So let's define a linkage rod very quickly and easily by just picking some of the cylindrical faces and add a dimension, another dimension, bulk material type, and there's my linkage, right? And now I can run this study, which is, it's got contact, it's got complex parts, it's got a complex mesh, but it's way simpler because I don't have that most complex part taking up all that nodes and elements, right? So again, contact penalty stiffness, kind of a big thing, but lots of cool stuff here. And let's just kind of summarize. So improved bonding interactions for non-touching faces, better diagnostic tools, enhanced under constrained bodies, and then the linkage rod for nonlinear studies. So that is it for SIM in 2023. So again, just a reminder, we've got breakout sessions coming up or going on right now if we ran over in time a little bit. Jesse and I want to thank everybody for joining us. And we're going to hang around for a little bit in the chat if anybody has any additional questions they want to ask us about.
Can I put you on the spot before we go?
Sure.
What's your favorite thing in 23?
Oh, that's a tough one. Of all the different stuff we've taken a look at, I think my personal favorites so far are some of the, not because it's the one I talked about, but some of the bomb enhancements and balloon enhancements in drawings, because everybody needs drawings, right? And a lot of those were enhancement requests, right? Yeah. And I think it's important everybody understands that SolidWorks is listening, still putting a lot of effort and care and love into the software. What about you? What was your favorite? They're all my favorite,
yeah,
but if you had to pick one.
If I had to pick one, it's not a visual thing, but it's just that setting for large assembly opening mode.
Yeah.
Because that's forever.
Yeah.
On all documents.
And you know what? We didn't really get into that a lot, but the thing with that is if you have a large assembly that's got a very sort of layered hierarchy, you're 5-6 levels deep in the hierarchy. If you open that in older versions in lightweight and you had an error at a sub that was like 4 or 5 levels down,
yeah. You couldn't find it.
Good luck. It was finding a needle in a stack of needles, right?
Yeah, good point. And we've got lots more content. We just couldn't get it all in here today.
Yeah, we didn't have enough time.
So we appreciate you guys' time. Keep an eye on the GoEngineer blogs and webs and YouTubes and all that.
And come to the community. Join the community, ask questions. There's literally thousands of folks just like you that are in the community, just like the old forums in the good old days. A lot of interaction. Also, lots of technical folks from GoE participating to make sure the answers are validated and accurate. And thank you.
Definitely excited for the new year. We'll catch you guys real soon.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Thanks, Mac.
Thanks, Jesse.
Bye.
Bye.